I 29M think my girlfriend's 27F Korean father doesn't want us to have kids because they'd be dark babies. How do I handle this? Okay, Reddit, I need some serious advice here because I'm completely lost on what to do. I've been dating my girlfriend Luna for 5 years now. She's Korean American, works in graphic design, and honestly, she's the love of my life. We've talked about marriage, kids, the whole future together. Her parents have always seemed to like me, or at least I thought they did. For context, I'm Black, work in IT systems analysis here in Seattle, and I've always been pretty careful about not coming across as threatening or aggressive. Maybe that sounds weird to some of you, but growing up Black in America teaches you to read rooms differently. Luna's parents immigrated from Korea when she was little, and her dad, Mr. Park, owns a small dry cleaning business. Her mom, Mrs. Park, speaks pretty good English, but her dad's is more limited. So here's what happened. I decided I wanted to do things the traditional way and ask her father's blessing before proposing. I've been saving up for a ring for months, had everything planned out. Last weekend, Luna and I went over to her parents' house for dinner like we usually do. Everything seemed normal at first. Mrs. Park was asking about work, talking about how excited she was that Luna and I were getting more serious. She even made some comments about looking forward to grandchildren someday, which made me feel really good about where I stood with the family. After dinner, Luna went to help her mom with dishes, and I stayed in the living room with Mr. Park. I thought this was my moment. I told him how much I loved his daughter and that I wanted to ask for his blessing to marry her. He nodded and said I was a good man, that he and Mrs. Park liked me. I was feeling really good about it. But then Mrs. Park called Luna into another room to look at something, and suddenly it was just me and Mr. Park alone. That's when his whole demeanor changed. He got this serious look on his face and said, "You are good man. We like you, but we not happy about you and her having dark babies." I swear to God, Reddit, my heart just stopped. I sat there in complete silence for what felt like forever, trying to process what he just said to me. Dark babies. Like our potential children would be some kind of problem because of my skin color. I mumbled something about understanding and left pretty quickly after that. Luna could tell something was wrong, but I told her I was just tired from work. I've been carrying this around for 2 days now, and I don't know what to do. Part of me wonders if I misunderstood because of the language barrier, but dark babies is pretty clear, right? And the timing of when he said it, right after I asked for his blessing, makes it feel intentional. My best friend Dax warned me about this kind of thing when Luna and I first got serious. He said some Asian families can be weird about Black partners, especially when it comes to kids. I didn't want to believe it because Luna's parents had always been welcoming, but maybe he was right. I keep going back and forth on whether to tell Luna. On one hand, she deserves to know how her father really feels. On the other hand, this could destroy their relationship, and maybe that's not my place. She's always been protective of her family, and I know this would devastate her. But I also can't just pretend it didn't happen. Every time I think about proposing now, I hear his voice saying, "Dark babies," like our future children would be something shameful. Has anyone else dealt with racism from a partner's family? How do you handle it when the family seems to like you as a person but doesn't want you having kids with their daughter? I'm supposed to see them again this weekend for Luna's cousin's birthday party, and I honestly don't know how I'm going to look Mr. Park in the eye. Any advice would be really appreciated. I'm completely at a loss here. Update 1. I spent 3 days agonizing over how to bring it up. Every time I tried to start the conversation, I'd chicken out because I knew how much this was going to hurt her. Luna is super close with her family, especially her parents, and I knew this would shatter something for her. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. We were having dinner at her apartment last Tuesday when I just blurted it out. "I need to tell you something your dad said to me last weekend." The look on her face immediately told me she knew it was something bad. I explained the whole thing, asking for his blessing, him saying they liked me as a person, but then the dark babies comment when we were alone. Luna's reaction was not what I expected at all. She didn't get sad or defensive about her family. She got pissed, like angrier than I've ever seen her. She started pacing around her living room saying things like, "How dare he say that to you?" and "That is absolutely unacceptable." I was actually trying to calm her down at that point because her anger was so intense. Part of me had been worried she might defend her father or try to explain it away, but she was having none of it. "We're going over there right now," she said, grabbing her keys. Luna, wait. Maybe we should think about this first. No, Brock, absolutely not. My father is going to explain himself right now. I tried to tell her we didn't have to make this a huge confrontation, that maybe we could handle it differently, but she was already calling her parents to say we were coming over. She was speaking in Korean, and from her tone, I could tell she was angry, even in another language. The drive over there was tense as hell. Luna kept apologizing to me and saying she couldn't believe her father would say something like that. She kept asking if I was okay, if I wanted to talk about it, but honestly, I was more worried about what was about to happen when we got there. When we arrived, Mrs. Park opened the door with this huge smile and immediately started talking about how nice it was to see us twice in 1 week. But she took one look at Luna's face and her expression changed completely. "Why do you both look so serious?" she asked. That's when Mrs. Park noticed the ring box I was apparently clutching in my hand without realizing it. I had grabbed it from my apartment on the way over because, honestly, I don't even know why. I guess part of me was thinking this might end up being the night anyway. Mrs. Park's eyes went wide and she looked between the ring box, Luna's angry face, and my obviously stressed expression. Did you already? Mom, we need to talk to Dad immediately, Luna said in English, but I could tell she was fighting to keep her voice level. Mr. Park appeared from the kitchen, took one look at all of us standing in the entryway, and I could see him trying to figure out what was happening. His eyes landed on the ring box too. "Oh," he said quietly. "You ask already?" "No, Dad, he didn't ask yet, but we need to talk about what you said to him last weekend." The look on Mr. Park's face when Luna said that was pure confusion. He looked between Luna and me like he had no idea what she was talking about. For a second, I wondered if maybe I had misunderstood after all. But then Luna started speaking to him in Korean, and I could tell from her tone and body language that she was confronting him about the comment. Mr. Park's expression shifted from confusion to what looked like panic, and he started responding rapidly in Korean. I stood there feeling completely helpless while they had this intense conversation in a language I couldn't understand. Mrs. Park kept looking between them and then at me with this worried expression. At one point she asked me in English, "What is happening? What did he say?" Before I could answer, Luna turned to me and said, "He wants to explain, but his English isn't good enough. He's asking if he can explain to me and I can translate." I nodded, because honestly, what else could I do? What followed was about 10 minutes of the most stressful foreign language conversation I've ever witnessed. Mr. Park was gesticulating and speaking quickly, sometimes looking at me with what seemed like regret. Luna's expression kept changing as he talked, confusion, surprise, and something that might have been relief. Finally, she turned to me. "Brock, I think there's been a huge misunderstanding." But before she could explain, Mrs. Park interrupted in English. "Can I see the ring?" And that's how my proposal secret came out in the middle of what I thought was going to be a confrontation about racism. The whole thing has been a whirlwind since then. Luna knows I was planning to propose, her parents know, and apparently there's a lot more to what her father said than I understood. Luna wants to explain everything to me, but she also wants to wait until we can all sit down together when everyone's calmer. I'm seeing them again tomorrow night for a proper conversation. Luna says she thinks her father was trying to say something completely different than what I heard, but she wants him to explain it himself. Honestly, Reddit, I don't know what to think. Part of me is hopeful that this was all just a language barrier issue, but part of me is worried that this is just going to be an attempt to smooth things over without actually addressing the real problem. Has anyone else experienced something like this with language barriers and serious conversations? How can I make sure I'm not just letting myself be convinced that something hurtful was actually innocent? Also, any advice on how to handle the fact that my proposal surprise is completely blown now? We'll update again after tomorrow's conversation. Update 2. Reddit, I owe some of you an apology, and I owe Mr. Park a huge one. We had the sit-down conversation last night, and I was completely wrong about what happened. I mean completely, embarrassingly wrong. Luna, her parents, and I met at their house. Mrs. Park made tea and everyone sat down in the living room. The atmosphere was still tense, but different than I expected. Mr. Park looked more nervous than defensive, and Mrs. Park kept giving me these worried, sympathetic looks. Luna started by asking her father to explain, in English as much as possible, what he was trying to tell me last weekend. She said she would help translate the parts that were too difficult for him. Mr. Park took a deep breath and started talking. His English was slow and he had to stop frequently to find words, but here's what he was actually trying to tell me. He said his extended family in Korea and some of the older Korean community members here have been making comments ever since Luna and I started dating. Not about me personally, but about the fact that she's dating someone black. He said some of his relatives have said inappropriate things about what our children would look like, whether they would fit in with the Korean side of the family, stuff like that. When he said, "We not happy about you and her having dark babies," he wasn't expressing his own feelings. He was trying to warn me that other family members have been saying things about our potential children being too dark to be accepted by the extended family. His concern wasn't about the children themselves, but about protecting them, and us, from the racist comments and potential rejection from some of his relatives. Luna explained that in Korean culture, when someone says "we" in this context, it can mean other people are saying, rather than "my wife and I believe." The grammar structure is different, and when translated directly to English without that context, it sounds like he was expressing his own opinion. Mrs. Park jumped in at that point and said she's been upset about the extended family comments too. She said some relatives have suggested that Luna should date someone more appropriate and have made disgusting remarks about mixed-race grandchildren. Mr. Park said he was trying to give me a heads up that if we got married and had children, we might face pushback from some family members. He wanted me to be prepared for it, not to scare me away, but so we could decide together how to handle it. The reason he brought it up right after I asked for his blessing was because he thought I should know what we might face before making such a big commitment. In his mind, he was being protective, not rejective. I felt about 2 inches tall listening to this explanation. Here I was thinking this man was racist against our future children, when he was actually trying to warn me about racism from other people and figure out how to protect us from it. I apologized immediately. I told him I understood why my reaction probably seemed hurtful and confusing to him. He apologized too, saying he should have been more careful with his words and asked Luna to help translate something so important. But then Mrs. Park said something that made me feel even worse. She said Mr. Park had been very sad since last weekend because he thought he had somehow offended me but didn't understand how. He'd been asking Luna if she knew why I seemed upset. Luna then told them about my proposal plan, and both her parents got excited. Mr. Park actually teared up a little and said he was honored that I wanted to ask his blessing in the traditional way. Mrs. Park asked if they had ruined the surprise, and honestly they had, but not in the way they thought. I told them the surprise was less important than clearing up the misunderstanding. Then Mr. Park said something that really got to me. He said, "Brock, you are like son to me. I want to protect you and Luna and your children from people who don't understand how good you are." I'm not gonna lie, I got a little emotional at that point. We ended up talking for another 2 hours about the family situation. Apparently, some of the comments from extended family have been getting worse lately, especially since Luna and I have been together longer, and it's obvious we're serious. Mrs. Park said they've already been limiting contact with the relatives who have been saying inappropriate things. They said if we get married and have children, they want to make sure we feel completely supported, even if it means cutting off contact with family members who can't be respectful. The whole thing was honestly overwhelming in the best way. I went from thinking I was facing racism from Luna's parents to finding out they've been actively protecting our relationship from other people's racism. Luna walked me out to my car afterward, and we talked about everything. She apologized for her family's extended relatives and said she's proud of how her parents have been handling the situation. She also said she's ready to cut contact with any family members who can't accept me or our future children. I told her I wanted to do the proposal properly, even though the surprise was blown. She laughed and said she'd pretend to be surprised. We're planning to get together this weekend so I can actually propose the way I originally wanted to. Her parents asked if they could be nearby, not watching, just in the house, when I do it, which actually sounds really nice. I'm also planning to have a longer conversation with Mr. Park about the extended family situation. Luna said some of the comments have been really hurtful, and I want to make sure we're all on the same page about how to handle it going forward. Reddit, I learned a huge lesson about assumptions and communication here. Language barriers are real, cultural context matters, and sometimes what sounds like rejection is actually protection. I also learned that Luna's parents are even more amazing than I thought. They've been dealing with racist family members on our behalf without me even knowing it. Final update. The proposal went perfectly. I took Luna to the park where we had our first date, and yes, she did act surprised even though we all knew it was coming. Her parents stayed home but were waiting with champagne when we got back to celebrate. Mrs. Park cried. Mr. Park shook my hand about 15 times, and Luna hasn't stopped looking at her ring. But more importantly, we had a family meeting about the extended family situation, and I think we've got a solid plan moving forward. Mr. Park and Mrs. Park sat down with me and Luna and laid out exactly which relatives have been saying problematic things. It turns out it's mainly Mr. Park's older brother and sister-in-law, plus one of Mrs. Park's cousins who immigrated more recently. The comments have ranged from suggestions that Luna should find someone Korean to gross speculation about what our children would look like to questioning whether mixed-race kids would really be Korean. What really got to me was learning that Luna's parents have been pushing back against this stuff for years. Mr. Park apparently had a huge argument with his brother about it last Christmas, and Mrs. Park stopped talking to her cousin after she made a particularly nasty comment about me personally. We decided as a family that we're not going to subject ourselves or future children to that toxicity. Luna and I will meet these relatives at some point so I can see for myself how they behave, but we're all prepared to cut contact if they can't be respectful. Luna's parents said they'd rather have a smaller, more loving family than deal with relatives who bring negativity to family gatherings. Mrs. Park said something like, "Family means people who love and support you, not just people who share blood." The most surprising thing was how relieved Mr. Park seemed after we made this decision. Luna told me later that he's been stressed about the situation for a long time, caught between protecting us and maintaining family relationships. What really struck me throughout this whole process was how Luna's parents stepped up. They could have tried to smooth things over or asked us to just ignore the comments for the sake of family peace. Instead, they chose us. They chose protecting their future son-in-law and grandchildren over keeping racist relatives comfortable. I also learned something about myself through this whole thing. My friend Dax was partially right when he warned me about potential family issues, but he was wrong about Luna's parents specifically. I think my past experiences with racism made me hypersensitive to signs of rejection, which caused me to misinterpret what was actually an attempt at protection. The language barrier definitely made things worse, but the real issue was that I jumped to conclusions instead of asking for clarification. Mr. Park was trying to have a difficult conversation about racism, and I heard it as racist instead of anti-racist. Luna and I have been talking a lot about communication going forward. We decided that anytime there's confusion about something important, especially involving family or cultural differences, we'll ask for clarification right away instead of assuming we understand. We're also planning to take some Korean language classes together so I can communicate better with Mr. Park and understand family conversations. Mrs. Park is excited about teaching me to cook Korean food, and Mr. Park wants to teach me about the dry cleaning business. Wedding planning is already starting, and Mrs. Park is in full mother-of-the-bride mode. She's already making lists of everything that needs to be planned and asking Luna about color schemes and venues. The best part is that I feel like I'm really becoming part of this family, not just dating into it. Mr. Park and I have been texting about business stuff. He wants to expand his dry cleaning business and asked for my thoughts on some technology upgrades. And Mrs. Park sends me articles she finds interesting. And to anyone dating interracially who's worried about family acceptance, good families will protect you from racism, not subject you to it. Luna's parents showed me what real acceptance looks like. It's not just tolerating your relationship, it's actively fighting against people who don't respect it.